Good, happy Sunday morning, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this edition of Politics with Riley King. Let's begin. First up, newest presidential candidate, Mayor Wayne Meziem, says current field mostly out of touch insider. Let's take a look at this video from WMUR News 9.
Commitment 2020 tonight, the newest presidential candidate is speaking to News 9, sharing that he believes the others in the running are mostly out-of-touch insiders. Miramar, Florida Mayor Wayne Meziem announced his candidacy for the Democratic nomination yesterday. On the phone this afternoon, the 44-year-old told News 9 political reporter John DeStaso that he plans to make a trip to the first-in-the-nation state in the coming weeks. Meziem says mayors are closest to the people and solve problems daily.
My candidacy brings a credible option for Americans to consider for the highest office. In terms of a state like New Hampshire that's dealing with this issue, they'll have a champion that will not only recognize this challenge, but will work hard to help solve that challenge.
Meziem is the son of Jamaican immigrants and has been fighting for gun control in Florida since the Parkland shooting last year.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Conversation with the Candidate Series 2020 Presidential Candidates. So, WMUR News 9 has been doing something called Conversation with the Candidate. Each election cycle, the presidential hopefuls have the unique opportunity to speak directly to New Hampshire voters in person, on TV, and online through the Conversation with the Candidate series. The following is the list of candidates who have participated in this series so far this election season. Take a look. Democrat Andrew Yang was the first one, then it was John Delaney and Pete Buttigieg, Marianne Williamson, and the last one recently was Bill Weld, Republican, running against Donald Trump. And you can click on each of those links and watch the series of that person and that candidate. New Hampshire Senate approves voting expectation for college students, military members. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9.
This is your invitation to be our guest. This is the invitation to Lexus sales event.
Lease the 2019 UX200 for $329 a month for 36 months now through March 31st.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
The New Hampshire Senate has passed a bill to protect out-of-state college students from a new voting law. The new law, which goes into effect in July, subjects out-of-state students to residency requirements like getting a New Hampshire driver's license in order to vote. The bill passed yesterday would create an exemption for college students and others living in the state temporarily. It now heads to the House.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Bill Weld says he would continue his practice of inexclusiveness as president. Let's take a listen to this video from WMUR News 9.
This is
Okay, we're having a little technical difficulty with the video player. Please give us a minute.
This is your invitation to be our guest. This is the invitation to Lexus sales event.
Lease the 2019 NX300 all-wheel drive for $359 a month for 36 months, now through March 31st.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
In conversation with the candidate, First in the Nation voters asked former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld why he's considering a primary challenge against President Trump, and he drew a strong distinction on character.
I shouldn't have to say this, but I will say this. I've never groped a woman anywhere, and I never will. Honestly, and if 13 women came forward and all said that I had groped them, I'd be very unlikely to say, well, they're all lying, because it would seem vanishingly unlikely.
Weld also faced questions about how he'd reduce the $22 trillion national debt.
What are you going to do to reduce the federal government's debt, and how will you prevent large deficits?
Well, I do what I did as governor in Massachusetts, and that's to engage in what's called zero-based budgeting.
In addition to starting the federal budget from scratch, Weld would also put a renewed emphasis on environmental policy.
Well, I think the president pulling us out of the Paris Climate Accords was a disaster, and I would rejoin on day one. I think we have to adopt 2050 CO2 limitations consonant with what other industrialized nations are doing.
Voters taking their measure of Weld say if he runs against President Trump, he needs to build a real campaign organization here.
It's going to have to be a lot of hard work.
While he ran for vice president as a libertarian in 2016, Weld remains in many ways an old-school New England Republican. In a time of deep division, his policy ideas could struggle to generate excitement, but his stylistic approach recalls a less dysfunctional politics.
I like how moderate he is. He had a little bit from both sides. He wasn't too extreme.
Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Ex-Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld visits New Hampshire after forming exploratory committee. Let's take a listen to this video from NECN Allison King.
Vision 2020 with a look at the Republican side of the presidential race. Former Governor Bill Weld has formed an exploratory committee. He's the first member of the president's own party to announce a potential challenge. But is his strategy to win or just weaken the president? Political reporter Allison King caught up with Weld campaigning in New Hampshire.
May I ask if I could shake your hand? I'm a washed-up, has-been politician. Billy Weld is my name.
If you want to run for president in the state of New Hampshire, it doesn't hurt to be a former governor of Massachusetts.
Bill Weld?
Yes,
how are you?
I did recognize
no kidding.
As he decides that he will take on President Trump in a Republican primary, William Weld is spending most of his time in the Granite State.
Why is New Hampshire a good fit for you politically?
Well, I mean, among other things, I'm an authentic outdoorsman, not a fake outdoorsman who has to go to Cabela's and buy all his stuff. The the day before he shows his face in New Hampshire.
Weld's real challenge, convincing the state's Republican primary voters, 2/3 of whom support President Trump, to vote for him.
Mr. Trump has been a New York City liberal Democrat most of his life, and on the issues, if people care at all about someone being an economic conservative, that's me.
Weld spent 7 years in the Reagan Justice Department. In the 90s, he was ranked the country's most fiscally conservative governor. He knows that reeling in the state's large number of independent voters may be his best shot.
The motto of the state is live free or die, and live free is kind of my politics.
If you go for this and you don't win the primary, but you significantly weaken Donald Trump, will you have done your job?
No, I won't have done my job unless I get to start, not Monday, but at some point at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Weld says he'll make his final decision in April. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Allison King, NBC 10, Boston.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Former lawmaker calls alleged touching and kissing by Biden awkward and disturbing. Let's take a listen to this video from ABC News.
Big political stories. First, former Vice President Joe Biden, who is reportedly on the cusp of announcing a presidential campaign, is now accused of inappropriate touching. How he's responding this morning.
Yeah, the big story this morning, will President Trump shut down the entire U.S. border with Mexico? He is threatening to do so this week. We're covering both of these stories this morning. John Carl is standing by with analysis. But let's start here with ABC's Stephanie Ramos, who's right there in D.C., with more on this allegation against Joe Biden. Stephanie, good morning.
Dan, good morning. A former Nevada politician says she was initially grateful and flattered that former Vice President Joe Biden was supporting her campaign for lieutenant governor back in 2014. But she says by the end of an event, he made her feel uneasy, gross, and confused after she says he kissed the back of her head. This morning, we're hearing for the first time from the woman accusing former Vice President Joe Biden of inappropriately touching and kissing the back of her head 5 years ago.
At that point, it wasn't even Joe Biden. It was the second most powerful man in the country. The Vice President of the United States of America is touching me and kissing me and smelling my hair.
Lucy Flores, a former Nevada politician, says the encounter happened right before she took the stage at a campaign rally. She came forward with her allegations in New York Magazine Friday.
What do? Who do you tell? It was awkward and disturbing and weird, but at the same time, it doesn't rise to the level of what most people would consider a very serious transgression.
In a statement to ABC News, Biden's spokesperson says neither the vice president nor his staff recall what Flores describes or got the impression she had been uncomfortable. Vice President Biden believes that Ms. Flores has every right to share her own recollection and reflections, and that it is a change for better in our society that she has the opportunity to do so. This is not the first time Biden has come under scrutiny for his behavior around women. In 2015, Biden put his hands on Stephanie Carter's shoulders, whispering in her ear during her husband's swearing in as Secretary of Defense. But the Flores allegations come as Biden considers a possible run for president in 2020. Democratic presidential candidates are now reacting to her claim.
I believe Lucy Flores, and Joe Biden needs to give an answer.
We need to live in a nation where people can hear her truth.
So why is she speaking out now? Well, she says hearing Biden's potential candidacy for president discussed without much talk about his past as it relates to women became too much to keep bottled up. However, several staffers, including women, are coming to Biden's defense. One former staffer tweeted she never felt uncomfortable with how he treated her or other women. Whit.
And the former vice president will certainly be answering more questions on this moving forward. Stephanie Ramos, thanks so much in Washington for us.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And That does it for this edition of Politics with Riley King. I hope you all enjoyed this edition of Politics with Riley King. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you back here next Sunday for another edition of Politics with Riley King, and have a great week ahead of you guys. Goodbye, everyone.